North Korea's Kim Jong-un is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Vladivostok. Top of the agenda is denuclearization, but also expanding their country's own bilateral ties. Data shows South Korea's economy shrank in the first quarter of this year by 0.3%. The decline led by a fall in exports and business investment. And profits at the world's second biggest semiconductor firm, Korea's SK Hynix, were down 69% in the first quarter from a year earlier, but things are looking better down the road. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning into our afternoon broadcast. I'm Devin Whiting. It's the first meeting in 8 years between the leaders of North Korea and Russia, and the first between these two leaders in particular. But will these talks help with the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula? For more on today's summit, our Foreign Ministry correspondent, Lee Ji-won, is on the line for us. So, Ji-won, what can you tell us so far?
Devin, we are now 3 hours into the first Kim-Putin summit. Now, there's been a little bit of a delay in schedule. After the leaders' one-on-one sit-down finished at around 3 p.m., the leaders started their expanded meeting about an hour later. So we are now about an hour into the expanded meeting with 2 more hours left to go. North Korea's Foreign Minister Jong-un and Vice Foreign Minister Jaein have joined Kim Jong-un in the expanded meeting, while on the Russian side, all the delegates, including the ministers of transportation, the Far East Development, are known to be at the meeting. Now, I'll go back a little and give you a brief recap of what happened earlier today. The leaders met slightly past 2 p.m. local time at the Far Eastern Federal University on Ruski Island. And at around 2:10, the leaders began with their one-on-one sit-down. There, the two leaders exchanged some opening remarks. Let's have a listen.
I believe our meeting will be a very useful one in developing the relationship between the two countries who have a long friendship and history into a more stable and sound one. The world is currently focused on the issues surrounding the Korean Peninsula. I think our talk today will be meaningful in that it allows us to exchange views and evaluations on the issue and jointly search for a solution ahead.
I'm convinced that your visit to Russia today will contribute to the development of bilateral relations and help to gain a better understanding of the possible ways to settle the situation on the Korean Peninsula, to see what can be done together, what Russia can do to support the processes that are now underway.
Now, according to local media, the two leaders are expected to hold a joint press conference at around 7 p.m. once their expanded talk is done, which will likely be followed by a dinner banquet.
Okay, so the talks are underway. What are we expecting to come out of them?
Well, Devin, like the two leaders have been emphasizing in their remarks, it seems they have mostly focused on the North's current talks with the U.S. Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov had also said that the focus of today's talk will be on finding a diplomatic solution to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But like you said, this is the first Pyongyang-Moscow summit in 8 years, the last one being in 2011 with Kim's late father Kim Jong-il meeting with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. And as much as the summit is seen as Kim Jong-un's effort to seek support from Russia after his summit with U.S. President Donald Trump collapsed in Hanoi, the two leaders are also likely to discuss the need to ease UN sanctions against the North. So aside from the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, the two sides are also expected to talk about their bilateral issues, especially their economic ties. Possible joint projects could include constructing a road crossing the Tumen River for easier transportation across the border. Back to you, Devin.
All right, got it, Ji-won. Thanks for that. We'll be checking back with you later on. Now, meanwhile, President Jaein of South Korea is working to give his peace drive a much-needed boost, while also closely monitoring the goings-on in Vladivostok. The top office says President Moon will meet about an hour from now with a top Russian official, Nikolai Patrushev, who is the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Patrushev is often described as Putin's right-hand man, and he will also meet with Seoul's National Security Advisor, Chung Eui-yong. No details yet about the agenda, but it's largely expected to be about the North Korea-Russia summit. Patrushev is also expected to talk about a possible visit to Seoul by President Putin to reciprocate President Moon's visit last year to Moscow. Now, we could be seeing some changes to the denuclearization negotiations going forward. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's right-hand man, who's been in charge of the nuclear talks with the U.S., has been removed from his post. Kim Yong-chol explains.
North Korea has replaced its top nuclear negotiator Kim Yong-chol, who has been the counterpart to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He has been replaced by Jang Geum-chol, a member of the North Korean Asia-Pacific Peace Committee. That's according to South Korean lawmaker Lee Hae-hun, who heads the National Assembly's Intelligence Committee, citing a source from Seoul's intelligence agency. Lee explained Kim appears to have been censured after the second North-U.S. summit ended prematurely with no deal. However, Lee also added it's too early to tell whether Kim Yong-chol is completely out of the regime's political picture. Kim Yong-chol's absence in the North's delegation to Russia, accompanying the regime's leader, also raised speculation over his possible replacement. With the replacement of Kim, a hardline military commander, analysts foresee changes in future denuclearization negotiations between Pyongyang and Washington. Some also predict the focus of denuclearization negotiations could not be shifted to the regime's foreign ministry from the ruling party Central Committee's United Front Department, which was formerly headed by Kim Yong-chol. Jang Geum-chol, who is barely known to the outside world, is reportedly in his late 50s and has a career of working for civilian exchanges between the two Koreas. In response to the news, the U.S. State Department has reiterated its stance that it will continue to engage in constructive dialogue with the regime without commenting further. Kim Yong-chol, Arirang News.
President Moon has presented letters of appointment to two new justices who will be serving on the Constitutional Court. They are Lee Mi-sun and Moon Hyung-bae. The president went ahead with their appointments while abroad in Central Asia, despite strong protests from the opposition parties against Lee over suspicions about her husband's stock trading. Lee has been denying any role in those activities, but apologized to the public for the controversy. And her husband reportedly sold all their shares, worth about $3 million. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is rebuilding its national museum, which will reopen in September. Ahead of that, officials from the country have come to Korea to get some tips on museum management. Lee Min-sun reports.
The Korea International Cooperation Agency and the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation invited officials from Congo to a workshop where they could learn Korea's expertise in museum management. The workshop was first held in 2017, and this year it focused on providing practical advice for the efficient operation of national museums. The Democratic Republic of Congo is building a new national museum, which will open in September. The museum there has been in a poor condition for over 60 years and is not easily accessible. Participants visited several museums in Korea, including Seoul Museum of History, the National Folk Museum of Korea, and the National Palace Museum of Korea.
Congo is a multiracial country with about 450 races, so we have various exhibitions. But I saw technical advances in the management of Korean museums. All of the classes and programs, including museum operation, education, and cultural goods, were useful.
Korean museums have efficient operating systems and each worker has expertise. In Congo's museums, one person would be in charge of multiple tasks. Also, I especially liked the education program about the preservation of exhibits.
Participants will wrap up the 3-week cultural workshop by making their own plans for the operation of the new National Museum. They will return to the Democratic Republic of the Congo on Friday, hoping to make practical use of the knowledge and advice from the program. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Falling exports and investment seem to have taken their toll on the South Korean economy. GDP in the first quarter actually contracted, the worst figure seen in more than 10 years. Kim Hye-sung has the details.
South Korea's economy shrank in the first quarter, declining 0.3% on quarter. This makes it the worst contraction since the global financial crisis, when the local economy sank 3.3% in the fourth quarter of 2008. On-year, first quarter real GDP expanded 1.8%.
Private consumption and government consumption increased, but exports, capital investment, and construction investment all fell.
Exports, which account for around half of the country's GDP, tumbled 2.6% on quarter, mainly on decreases in exports of electrical and electronic equipment like LCDs. Private consumption edged up 0.1%. Government consumption rose 0.3% with increased healthcare benefits, but much lower than the 3% growth seen in the fourth quarter. Capital investment plummeted nearly 11% to a 21-year low due to decreases in machinery equipment like chips. Construction investment edged down 0.1%. Led by Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi, economy-related ministers held an emergency meeting Thursday and said the government will provide support measures, including the injection of an extra budget and improving the corporate investment environment. The Bank of Korea had already cut its growth outlook for the year by 0.1 percentage points to 2.5% last week. To reach that target, the BOK said the local economy will have to grow by over 1.2% in the second quarter and by around 0.8 to 0.9% in the remaining two quarters. Kim Yong-chol, Arirang News.
Now, with the markets closed in Korea, it's time to check out the action here and around the world. And for that, we're joined on the line by Daniel Yu, global strategist at Kiwoom Securities. Mr. Yu, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, as we just heard, data out today from the BOK saying the economy actually shrank in the first quarter. GDP growth of minus 0.3%. Stocks down today again. What happened here and in other markets?
Yes, if you look at U.S. market, it's been very strong on Monday. NASDAQ broke historical high of closing at above 8,100 level. And also Chinese market was closing higher yesterday, but today a little bit of corrections. And despite all that, you've seen a Korean market showing a weakness in the past 2 days. Yesterday, Korean market fell more than 1%. Today, it has fallen for Kospi about 0.5%. Kosdaq is down about 0.98%. Clearly, the news of the economic growth shrinking in the first quarter versus the last quarter made this kind of impact. However, though, the growth rate itself is YOY 1.8% compared to the last year, same period. And most likely going into the second half of this year, growth rate will pick up continuously. The reason for the sharp fall, we think, is because of the fixed asset investment falling to the historical low level. It is down by 10.8% year on year. That is a quite significant drop. If you think about Korean economy growing somewhere around 2.5% on average. However, though, the fixed asset investment will pick up going into the second half as Samsung and various companies are announcing increase in the fixed asset investment. So the economic growth itself should stabilize around first quarter to second quarter and then pick up around third quarter. That will impact the equity market going forward.
Got it. Well, you mentioned U.S. stocks. They, of course, reached new all-time highs earlier this week, but down the very next day. What's driving that movement and where is it headed?
Sure. Most of the earnings are coming out. We've seen the earnings release are coming in better than expected. However, though, earnings are declining from the last quarter. At the beginning of the year, they were expecting about 4% plus of decline, but actual numbers are coming in at less than 3% decline. That's the reason why the earnings are coming in higher than expected. And that's why the share price has been risen, but nevertheless, valuations become a little bit stretched because earnings are still going down from the previous quarter. So the market fell for Dow 0.22%, NASDAQ was down 0.23%, and S&P was down 0.22%. However, though, the after-hours numbers are coming in very strong. The Microsoft announced the earnings at $1.14 versus forecast of $1, significantly higher. Facebook also announced a $1.89 per share versus $1.61 estimation forecast. So the after-hour, these two stocks are up 4% and 8% respectively. Therefore, we do think that at the end of the today from the U.S. market, NASDAQ will continue to break the record high level in the future.
So we could be looking at another strong open there in a few hours. Now let's talk about oil prices. They came down after 3 days of gains, setting 6-month highs, perhaps getting over some of the shock after the U.S. announcement from about the Iran sanctions. Where do you see oil prices going forward, and what does that mean for other markets like equities?
Yes. As I've said earlier before, oil prices should settle in the long run. Right now, it is around $65 level. We think that the band has risen slightly, but nevertheless, we think that oil price should remain at some stable level around $60 to $65 level. The main reason for that is because of the shale gas production increase that we've seen throughout the last several years, and also Saudi Arabia and UAE have promised to increase the production increase. As for Korea, because they import around 10% of total oil from Iran, that could have been very negative news for the Korean market, but Saudi Arabia promised that they will substitute for the Iran oil. So in terms of cost increase, we think that it's not going to be that significant. One thing that we have to watch out is the shale gas revolution, and that is here to stay, which means that much lower oil price generations going forward in a much longer term period. This will reduce the overall cost of factors, and that's the reason why the U.S. is increasing their production capacities and getting in more foreign investment coming into the country, and the economic growth rate rising a little bit more in terms of the future growth. So all that being said, we don't think that oil price is going to go up higher. We think that oil prices should remain at around $60 to $65 level in the future.
Okay. Got it, Mr. Yu. We'll have to leave it there, though. Thanks so much for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, profits at the world's second biggest memory chip maker, SK Hynix, plunged by more than 2/3 in the first quarter on falling prices and weaker demand. SK Hynix says its profits came to $1.2 billion between January and March, down 69% on year, making it the lowest figure in more than 2 years. Revenue dropped 22%. The company said, however, that it expects a recovery in memory chips later this year due to rising demand from data centers. The South Korean government is running an exhibition to help startups find regular buyers in the public sector, not just buyers in the Korean public sector, but governments around the world. It's attracted more than 400 small and medium-sized businesses. Our Cha Sang-mi went to check it out.
In an effort to promote entrepreneurship and help venture firms grow, Korea's Public Procurement Service sprang up to match small and medium-sized companies with domestic and international buyers. The 2019 Korea Public Procurement Expo opened on Wednesday at Kintex in Ilsan. On display at this year's expo are the latest innovative products like drones, 3D printers, and self-driving cars. The government is looking to find and help these venture companies and tech startups to help them find regular clients for their products. 440 SMEs are showing off their latest products and patents at the 3-day expo. Their products range from monitors to electric road sweepers that wash fine dust off the ground.
This expo was organized to open a new path of public procurement for new venture companies. So far, even though the startups and venture firms made good products, they didn't have the chance to promote their products properly. We hope this expo will help them sell their innovative goods.
Participants have the chance to expand their sales channels and learn more about the current trends in the government procurement market.
We are a 3D printing manufacturing company. We have come to this expo to try to seize the opportunity of meetings with foreign buyers. I'm hoping to hear some good results from my meeting today.
More than 160 foreign government officials and buyers from 28 different countries are visiting to look for business opportunities and partnerships.
You know, Swaziland is not a high manufacturing country, so a lot of our products we import. For example, I've gotten interested here in the street lighting system, because currently in our country, our local governments are busy trying to procure lighting systems for their different towns.
Foreign buyers say the experience is a unique chance for them to get hands-on experience of the products they are interested in. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
South Korea is one of the world's leading countries in the field of eSports, both in terms of competition and production of the games themselves. There are also technologies like virtual reality and artificial intelligence that promise even more development in the field. Now we present the third and final part of a series on how the Korean wave, or Hallyu, is diversifying. Our Seo Bin looks at online gaming.
South Korea is well known for its online gaming and is the fifth largest online game market in the world. With esports fever growing, it has got to the point where esports can be seen as part of Hallyu. From Overwatch to Battlegrounds, what might seem like just fun games to play has for younger generations become a culture and sport.
The main group of people who enjoy esports are millennials. The biggest cultural part of their daily lives are games and consuming mobile content. Esports lets them share that common culture through games, therefore it's very popular among teens.
Esports are gaining interest globally, and it has reached a point where esports can even be seen in high school varsity sports competitions in the United States. With Korean esports growing overseas, they are becoming part of a new Hallyu.
It's already been 20 years since Korea started esports, and since South Korean esports players show they are the best, people see esports contents made in Korea as the best. People show great interest in Korean esports and even buy the broadcast rights to see the games.
Moreover, with the growth of IT and broadcasting industry, the esports industry is also booming.
In order for esports to take its position as a major industry, institutional management needs to be solidified, and since esports is a convergence of IT, communications, and entertainment, if professions related to these industries work together, the esports industry is sure to grow.
Esports is one of the trendiest sports of the digital era, with the development of VR and AR, and as IT develops even more, synergies between these technologies and esports will help the industry get even stronger in the future. Seo Bin, Arirang News.
Korea's Environment Ministry says it'll set up a digital forensics center to more effectively track down those polluting the environment. The ministry announced on Thursday that it will hold a signboard hanging ceremony at the government complex in Gwacheon on Friday. The center will be in charge of investigating environmental crimes by analyzing digital evidence from computers and mobile phones. The ministry says it plans to apply the scientific method to look closely at socially sensitive issues such as waste disposal and emissions of fine dust, and punish those contributing to environmental pollution. South Korea continues to slide towards a demographic cliff. Data show this February the birth rate fell to yet another record low, as did the number of marriages. Kim Dami has the figures.
This February marked the lowest birth rate for the month since data first started being compiled in 1981. According to Statistics Korea, a total of 25,700 babies were born, almost 2,000 less compared to a year earlier. This means that for every 1,000 people, only 6.5 babies were born in the month of February.
Women aged between 30 and 34 give birth the most, but that population is decreasing, leading to the decline in childbirths.
Other experts are pointing to a change in opinions on marriage as opposed to the decrease in population as the main reason behind the decline.
Women in South Korea have now become individuals who believe they deserve respect. In a society where patriarchal ideas remain, marriage and giving birth are seen as rather unfair.
The marriage rate for February reflects this reasoning. It also marked the lowest to ever be recorded for the month of February, with around 18,000 couples tying the knot, and predictions for the rest of the year also look bleak. According to the country's unique age system, everyone is one when they're born and turns 2 along with the new year. So South Koreans are set to prefer giving birth in earlier months to prevent their child turning 2 at the beginning of the year. Considering such trend, the birth rate is only expected to drop for the rest of the year, with the total birth rate forecast to mark less than 300,000. Acknowledging the demographic slide as inevitable, the government this month formed a task force and will introduce welfare and education policies in June to suit the country's rapidly declining population. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
And that does it for Arirang News at this hour. Thanks for being with us. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.